Super. So a little introduction. Our company, ingathlon.com, is the market leader real estate listing site in Hungary. We have about 150 people. Our data team is in the small size, 6 people and 1 data engineer, that is me. And we had a data warehouse migration last year where we had an old PostgreSQL data warehouse with a lot of stored procedures that were doing the transformations that was orchestrated by Airflow. And last year we moved all our data related things to BigQuery, and the transformation, the T in the ETL, was done with dbt, and the orchestration is done by dbt Cloud. And we had some great results and installed some software engineering principles in it, and also our daily runs from 2.5 hours shrink to 7 minutes. So we were really happy with it, and I will show you some things about it. This is our data infrastructure. I will just give you a glimpse of it. We have a Snowplow-like tracking and collecting of event data coming from the client and server side. We have data application tools, Stitch and Luma, for our production databases to take the data into BigQuery. We have some homegrown Airflow decks that take data from Salesforce and some custom Google Sheets to BigQuery through cloud storage. We also use Firebase Analytics and Google Analytics exports that go into BigQuery. From then on, when we have loaded all the data, we run dbt on it to make it available for reports. And then we use Data Studio and Tableau in different teams of the organization to showcase the results of the transformation tables. But this is all the good part. The problem is that, as Josh said it before, documentation is really important, but creating and maintaining it has always been a pain in the neck. Either it be a Python script, but also for proper documentation for all the tables and the columns that we have in our data warehouse. We have several source systems, 100 plus source tables, 100 plus models in dbt. And the documentation previously could have only been found in Excels, in Google Sheets, sometimes in Confluence, but sometimes they were out of date. And sometimes they only resided in some developer's mind. And if they left, then it was gone. And with our migration efforts, we wanted to focus on finally making up for this documentation debt and trying to come up with some solutions so that if we onboard a new data analyst or data scientist, then he or she will know, what we have in store and can work out his or her way more easily with proper documentation. There are many tools for metadata and for documentation purposes. With some of them will be showcased later. Weaveworks has Marquez. Google Cloud has a data catalog kind of product, but we stuck with dbt's documentation side that comes out of the box if you manage to create some sources, some YAML files for the sources and models. I will show it in the demo how it looks, where you can attach the descriptions for the tables and also data tests for uniqueness, for not null, for other things, but that's a bit of a different topic. I will focus on the documentation. And there's a really handy site where you can see where all these YAML files end up in. But once we started filling out the documentation, we wanted to somehow measure how we are making progress, because there were so many tables that were really poorly documented before in Google Sheets that we wanted to know where we are right now and then see how we can progress. I think there was a question about this, and there's a saying, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And so we wanted to give it a number, like what's the state of our documentation. And first we have to define what's a proper documentation for a table. And we came up with an easy definition that the table has to have a description and all of its columns have to have one. You can mingle with it or play around with it and have a different definition. We went with that. And after that, when you have it for one table, you want to see for all your sources or all your models how it is. And then it's just the ratio of the properly documented tables to all the tables. So if 6 tables are properly documented by this definition out of 10, then you have 60% or 60 as the score. And as the time progresses, you can see if you made any improvements. And just as an eye candy, with a small Python utility that we wrote, we put on these numbers on the GitLab pages of our projects, so that you see where we are in this documentation effort. So from 60 you have yellow, and from 90% you have green, and it kind of helps motivate the team to get it to green, and once we achieve that, to maintain it. And I will show you what DBT looks like and how we can play with this little tool. Just close this. So this is how you can document your sources. You say in which schema and which database it resides. It's a public data set from BigQuery, and you have the names of the tables and the description and all the columns. You can set up tests in this case too, and also in your sources, but now I was focusing just on the documentation. In this one, when you are documenting the tables, then you see I have some accepted value tests. I have not null tests later, but also it's fairly well documented. And once I run this documentation utility, then in debug mode, then it says that this model, this column is missing its description. This sources, this tables, this column is missing also its description. So for the sources, 1 out of 2 is well documented, and from the models, it's 2 out of 3. And then when we look at it, then we see that this capacity ratio is missing. So if I fix it, just click to and run a dbt compile, so that it makes a new manifest.json that encompasses this modification. And I run the tool again, and I will see that now my model has 100 of the score, and the source is still at 50. And if I want to upgrade the badge, I just run this, and it finishes. And once I'm back, then the model looks is at 100%. So we are happy with it. And then now we just need to fix those source descriptions that are missing. And what we can achieve is this site with DBT, where you have your sources. And as you see, this is where all these descriptions from the YAML end up in. And for this tweet to capacity ratio, I haven't updated it or started again the documentation side. That's why it's missing, but everything else is well put here. So from this YAML, with some tool to make it work and to see what's missing, you can make sure that this site is up to date and it's properly documented. And also you can use these Python scripts in your CI pipeline. So if it doesn't meet a certain threshold, then you can just reject the pull request, and at the end, when everything goes well, you just update the badges so that the team can see where we are.